Right, hello there everyone, welcome back to James Redmond TV, back to you with another piece of short form content. And if you like the short videos, then I'm happy to bring them to you, especially when I'm not in the Redmond headquarters. Come to you pretty as always, but just with a lot of extra bum fluff. We will get it shaved, but listen, if I'm not here to impress anybody, and if it takes me from a 10 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10, then they're just the sacrifices we have to make, don't we? So allow me with the bum fluff. But today I want to talk about Paul Joyce's article from The Times, mentioning three crucial parts, or should I say three crucial stories around the football club at the moment. And I thought, with it being international break and there's not much going on at the moment, why not delve into it a little bit? He mentions about Mark Guehi. He also gave a comment on Konate's current situation, and he even mentions about how some of the deadline day deals, some of which could have happened if Guehi was to come in, i.e. Joe Gomez. So we'll talk about that in this one. There's not much to report on international duty. I don't even think we've got any players on international duty, at least for England. Has Curtis Jones been called up to England? He might have. Honestly, that information is completely out of my brain, and I'd imagine you'd already see faceless Liverpool pages do a fail comps if he did play for England, so don't even know if he's been called up. Definitely hasn't played, couldn't have so far. Anyway, Paul Joyce put an article out, and again, there's just not that much to talk about, but I did think it was worth popping in here. Again, I'm not in the Redmond headquarters, and I wanted to talk about the three specific points that he spoke about on his article. I'll start off with Mark Guehi before I delve into Konate and Gomez and all this, because I feel like it all links together somewhat. And he basically clarified that Liverpool will not be going in for Guehi in the January window. And another thing that I'll just briefly mention, I don't know what the fact there it was that a hit? Another thing that I'll completely mention is that in a time like right now where there's no transfer window and stuff, Paul Joyce is a good person to listen to, because the way I think of it, when Paul Joyce speaks, I think of it as, what do Liverpool want me to know? So Liverpool today have told me, Mark Guehi, we will not pursue him in January, with the fact he's entered the final year of his contract, and we'll just basically see it out until he's free in the summer. First and foremost, to me, that's good news, because all that confirms is that we're still interested in Mark Guehi. Another thing that it confirms to me is that even though a lot of Liverpool fans watching this, and a lot of people who certainly watch my content, they love the idea of having Konate, Guehi and Virgil plus Gomez and Leone. I think what a lot of people are missing is that if Guehi was to have come in, Gomez likely would have been given the green light to go to a Brighton or an AC Milan on the final day of the season, which was being talked about as well. So all it tells me is I don't think Liverpool will go back in for Guehi under any circumstances, whether it be January or the summer, unless the club was given reassurance from the player's side himself. The reason why I think that's important is because I just think that's how the data nerds operate. They set the sights honed in on one player, and I think without the reassurances given, so I don't think we pursue Isak the way we pursued Isak without the personal reassurances that was given. You know, I don't think the Wirtz deal goes as far as it does without the reassuring conversations that we had with the player. You know, so on and so forth. I could come up with all type of examples, but this is the model that the data nerds just operate under. They like to make sure when they're going in for a player, they've done the groundwork and they can have the full green light to get the player. So the reason why I take this as good news from Paul Joyce, because a lot of people would have wanted us to go back in again in January, get Guehi for a cuff fee. First of all, despite today's report, that's not completely, not an option. It's not something Liverpool can't do, especially if we get ourselves into an injury crisis. We can definitely pursue Guehi for a 10 to 15 million pound deal in January, but is it most logical to just see it through from that point until he's a free agent? Yes, of course it is. Why would you spend 10 to 15 million on a centre-back who's just going to be another option at that point, again, unless we have an injury crisis? Or do you just wait and get him for free the very following summer? And I think that makes sense for us. It makes sense for the player, because he's going to be playing in Europe with Palace, so on and so forth, and could be just a nice little additional mantle to add to his resume if he's able to win the European Cup with Crystal Palace. That's probably the better dream ending than what he would have had originally. So for me, it makes all sense on all parties if we go and get Guehi next summer. That doesn't mean I'd refuse any chance to sign him in January, but Would I rather Guehi for free in the summer or buy him for 15 million in January when we've still got Konate and Leone and Gomez? Yeah, I think I'd rather just wait out. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. So again, just to summarise that news, Paul Joyce confirming, we are still interested in Guehi. We will pursue him next summer, but it just won't be in January, as many people probably would have liked. And again, whether that ends up happening or not, I think is purely based on a injury crisis happening or not. To link it, because another thing that Joyce mentions in this article was talking about Konate, and I think Konate has a huge part to play in all this. Not necessarily the addition of Guehi, but more how do we get the Guehi deal done. So we all know that he's in the final 12 months of his deal. We also know that Konate came out today with the comments that Mbappe's calling him every 2 hours to bring him to Real Madrid, so on and so forth. And from what we understand, Liverpool gave Konate their final contract offer a few weeks ago, and as it stands, we still haven't had a response from Konate in terms of accepting or rejecting the bid. Why is that important? If Liverpool, which I don't have any reason to not believe Liverpool in this case, that they're not going to go ahead and give Konate another contract offer. I believe we won't. I believe the contract offer that's on the table is the final offer for Konate. The only thing that I have is Konate hasn't accepted it, and that tells me either his agent takes a really long time to read over contract offers, or he's just not happy with the terms. And if he's not happy with the terms, that tells me that he's leaving, because I don't think we'll go in for another offer. And I also don't think he's going to budge on what his demands are. And I also just think Real Madrid are, as we speak, doing the underlying groundwork on the Konate deal, and he will be interested in going there. Why wouldn't he? He's not, a scouser. He's not been brought up through the academy and so on and so forth. He's got no obligation to stay at Liverpool, pretty much, and he can get a cushy fee in the process. And we all know Real Madrid love a little free deal. Why does that link? I think it links because if we then expect... Because, listen, we might already know Konate's not going to be signing an extension. Again, it's been a couple of weeks since that offer was made to him. All I'm suggesting is if Konate hasn't signed that new deal, it tells me the club might know he's on his way out. That could be something that's just like unofficially known from all parties now that he will probably go without it being confirmed. That then means, is there a desperation to go and get Guehi in January for 15 million, or would it make sense from a financial point of view? One free centre-back out, one free centre-back in. That's why this link is still there, because I think the club see Guehi as a potential Konate replacement. I also think them wanting Guehi in the summer was because they wanted Guehi, but also to alleviate any pressure they have when it comes to the Konate talks. Because if we had Guehi in the door right here, right now, these Konate conversations would be so much easier. If there was no guarantee on Guehi, whether it be now or in the summer for free, then I think the Konate thing just adds a little bit more pressure to the club again. Maybe would they go in for one more offer? I don't think so, but it's just something to explore. And then finally, the thing that Paul Joyce mentions in his article was Joe Gomez nearly joining Brighton on the deadline day, and how that deal was close, but due to other deals not going through, meant that obviously he stays at the club for another season. And we go into this season with the same depth as we had last year, except Kwanzaa out and Leone in. So for me, it was all moving parts. Everyone's saying that they want 5 centre-backs, 5 out-and-out centre-backs. Forget the youth academy centre-backs. Forget, the guys who can fill in as a centre-back option, as a 5th choice, a 1% worry, by the way. Like, everyone worrying about not having 5 amazing centre-backs as a squad depth in the case of an injury crisis. An injury crisis we've only ever seen once at the back in 2021. I don't want to call it stupid. I just think it's a little bit... It is a bit career mode-ish, isn't it? Getting Vert and Isak seems to be a bit career mode-ish, but really that's just smart business because you're buying world-class players. Plus, going into the season, we only had 1 striker officially, so you can't just go in with Ekatike. You do need another forward on top of that. That's why Isak was important. And Vert was just a fantastic opportunistic signing who, in the future, might have not shown it to this point, but in the future can be a really, really big impact and green flag on the way Liverpool play and win us games individually, really, once he's settled. So them ones made sense. What doesn't make sense is bringing in a 5th choice centre-back on over 80 grand a week in the 1% chance that we might have an injury crisis and we need to call them up. We've still got Van Dijk, we've got Konate for the season, despite if his head's in Madrid or not. And then you've got Gomez and Leone as the backups. And listen, I don't think there's too much difference in quality between Kwanzaa and Leone. I even think Leone could be better than Kwanzaa. But again, that's just a personal point of view. You guys know I love Leone. So yeah, you know, the Gomez thing nearly leaving doesn't surprise me because I don't think Liverpool would have wanted to have. I think they'd have had it if it was the only thing that fell on the lap. But do I think Liverpool planned to have Guehi, Konate, Virgil, Leone and Gomez on their centre-back list? No, I think they would have happily kept the boys happy with 4 options to rotate between. And if we do ever get a serious injury, again, like I said before, dive into the squad, use a versatile player, bring in an academy player. That is how you are meant to use squad rotation. So that's just my view on Paul Joyce's article. I think we've got no real change on the Guehi stuff besides the fact, again, what do Liverpool want us to hear? They want us to hear that we're going for Guehi next summer. We're not going to pursue him in January, which could just be a little rebuttal to not come across as desperate. We're not desperate to get Guehi, but if an opportunity for about 10 million comes up in January, we might go for him. That could be one thing. But if we come across like we're desperate, then you just know Crystal Palace are going to slap a bloody £20 million deal in January and they'll expect us to pay it. So act like you don't need him. Could get the price lower, or you just end up getting him for free next season. If that culminates with Konate leaving, perfect. You've got one world-class centre-back in and one world-class centre-back out. So you've done a like-for-like and you've spent no money. And then on the Gomez stuff, what that tells me is Liverpool are happy with their current centre-back options in terms of numbers. But again, it would have been ideal to get the Guehi deal done, but that would have likely meant Gomez goes to a Brighton or an AC Milan or whoever it would have been. So let me know what your thoughts was on the article. I don't think it's any worry or big, you know, disaster that people online have been making out. But I thought I'd just give my 2 pence on it. And in future, if I do see articles from the likes of Paul Joyce or David Ornstein, again, I see these guys as credible sources when it comes to Liverpool. And again, when they speak, it kind of makes me want to listen more because I want to know what the club's telling me. So I'm happy to do these videos more in future if you want. Again, little short form content. But until then, people, I will be seeing you later. This will be all you're getting from me today, unless more news comes out. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you all in a bizzle. Ta-da.